Hello and welcome to another episode of DCU Daily, and we are back talking about Superman and more on-set photos. Superman today is busy saving a squirrel. He's also wearing a different cape than we have seen him wear the last few days. So we're gonna dive into that and talk about it a little bit. We got a little more information about what that Zack Snyder Justice League theatrical release looks like exactly. Unfortunately, it's not quite maybe what was implied. I mean, I don't think he implied anything personally by his post, but he also didn't, do us any favors by making it a very vague hint at, oh, it's getting released theatrically. It's not really. We'll get into it. And then there's rumors out there around Supergirl casting for that movie, so we're gonna dive into that as well. Of course, there's more photos from the set of some destruction happening, cars being crushed and such. We're gonna dive into those photos. So I'm so excited to do all of that. We've been doing it all week. It's 4th of July. I hope you guys had a fantastic holiday. John, how was your day and how are you doing today?
Ooh, it was relaxing, but I think too relaxing. So if I'm a little less, if I'm like kind of like a little spacey today, I do apologize. I was just it was just a very nice and relaxing day. And again, if you hear fireworks in the background, obviously I apologize, but I can't stop people from having fun late at night, even if it makes my dog petrified, which makes me want to go John Wick on these people. But that's beside the point. So yes, I
Right.
apologize if
No, we
I
don't want to do that.
feel a bit spacey. Since it's a bit of a holiday, and I'm not used to doing this on holiday. But you know what? You know what? Seeing Superman saving squirrels out of trees has me intrigued. Maybe not cats, but squirrels is a new one,
Not too bad.
and
Not too
I'm
bad.
very intrigued with that. So let's get into it.
Yeah,
Oh,
hell yeah. I mean, look, here he is.
there he
I don't know where the
is.
squirrel is. I think they're
CGI
probably gonna
probably.
maybe. Yeah, that seems like probably the move. It might be a CGI squirrel added in because he's clearly got something in his hand, but it's not a squirrel. But there was a shot earlier in the day where you see a squirrel in this glass box. That looks like a live action squirrel. You've got an animal wrangler there.
Hmm.
That she also looks like she's the same person who was working with the dogs a few days ago. I think it was late last
Yes.
week.
Yes.
And you can see Superman is there, sort of trying to. I guess maybe they're trying to get some reference shots, maybe. Because I bet you, like, it's probably not very easy to, have a squirrel act with you. So it's likely that they're using that for lighting reference to see how the squirrel moves, maybe for even David Corenswet to kind of get an idea of like the sense of size and scale and how he's going to interact with it.
Hmm.
And then when they actually have the shots in the movie, you're going to see a CGI squirrel. But what's interesting me even more is, of course, James Gunn, directing Superman's flying today. You could see that
Yeah.
he's on wires, and then later on he has a cape on, like the full cape on for like the close-ups. But if you
Hmm.
go back a few pictures, like here, he's got just enough of the cape to where you could see, maybe because the shots are being filmed from the front, they don't really have a real true cape behind him. Also because with the wires, it's
The
likely going to get
wires would be
tangled
in the
up
way. Yes.
in the wheels. So chances are this means that we're going to get a digital extension of the cape. What are your thoughts about seeing that for the first time? Because up until now, everything we have seen with Superman, it seems like he always had the full cape. But today was the first time we
Yeah.
kind of see a mini cape, if you will, where you can clearly see, like, with the angle of the shot, they'll probably have a CGI cape,
Hmm.
floating behind him, while what the attachment area, that's going to be the real deal.
I know I was kind of shit talking CGI capes before, but obviously, you have to have shots. There's certain shots where you have to have them. So, yeah, this I like how it is kind of like a mini cape and not just like trackers, because then it kind of gives the VFX artists a bit more to work with in terms of like the fabric and the look. Even if it's only a little bit, it gives them more of like a direction to like kind
Hmm.
of go with. And I really like that. I think that's definitely an interesting way to go. And I feel like he has like VFX artists in mind to maybe make their jobs a little bit easier. Maybe it makes it harder. I don't know. I'm not a VFX artist, so I can't exactly judge on
Yeah.
that account. But like from an outsider looking in, as someone who doesn't do VFX work, I feel like that would be easier because it gives like a lot of like setup for a good proper like cape flowing rather than just kind of guessing, I guess. But yeah, and it looks interesting how David Corenswet is like doing his own kind of flying, at least here from the back, at
Right.
least it looks kind of like
Well,
that.
yeah.
So
I mean, a lot of actors nowadays do a significant amount of wire work. I think it's maybe when it comes down to doing certain fight sequences, you might see that, or in this situation where if Superman might be fighting, some villain at a distance, they might just have a CGI double instead of having a stuntman. But for stuff like this, it looks like he's comfortable enough, hanging off wires to pull this off. And you can clearly see just because of where the wire attachments are that the material is really really thin. Like I mean, there's texturing so that it looks real, but like there's not much to it in terms of the layering. Like it looks like a very thin layer, um, and under that they have got all the padding, of course. Uh, the other thing I wanted to kind of point out is again, like Superman is, well, here he's got one foot on the ground, but it looks like he's flying across the crowd, and this is the first time we've really seen him on set kind of do a total flying sequence, because
mhm.
up till now he's been on the ground, or like he's trying to do a takeoff sequence, but nothing else beyond that. Um, Here are some more photos from Cleveland.com where all these other photos were coming from too, and we have seen this one, of course, John Kuhn's, and again, just doing a fantastic job of getting us these pictures. Now,
Mhm.
here's a picture of a couple of dozers
Yeah.
taking down a bunch of cars. I wonder what's going on over there. Like, John, what are your thoughts on this? Because I was wondering, this can't be one of those things where cars are flipping and falling into some kind of big pile, but it certainly feels like this could be a situation where maybe Green Lantern's involved. Is
Yeah,
is
that's what
Green
I was
Lantern
thinking.
doing something like?
Yeah,
uh,
because you kinda see on the side and on the top, it looks like there's trackers there. I mean, that could just be, like, reflective tape or logos or something. But it looks like there is, on some parts of the vehicle, so I'm thinking, like, they're using tracker markers, and then they're gonna, make it green and glowing in the final film, and this is just, like, Guy Gardner doing cleanup. Or they have cars, and they're making them more crushed for, like, the post, like, action sequence.
Yeah,
Like, they look kinda crushed, and then, like, something
right.
happens, they
Yeah.
cut, and then they crush them some more, so it looks, like, more destruction heavy, and then they resume the scene, and now the cars are more destroyed. But, I mean, it could go either way. I hope it's Green Lantern, doing his thing and, just using his ring and doing a solid cleanup, because that would be more, interesting and fun.
I
So,
I I like to think that this is something to do with the story, because
yeah.
there is a shot. Let me see if I can find it where James Gunn is sort of setting up. I mean, there's also all these pieces of destruction that are hanging about. I can imagine those are going to get put into play at some point. Either they already were used, or chances are if they're out there, these are being prepped to be used at some point. Where
Yeah.
this
I
is
was
going to look
wondering
like,
what this was, but yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, broken pieces of street, and maybe
Yeah.
buildings and stuff, because
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
they're clearly prepping the art department here. You've got a lot of background work again, where you've
Yeah,
got people running
extras,
away from
people running
something,
away, yeah.
extras, and like police cars and such. There's of course, more reference photography of a squirrel happening here, where you
Mhm.
can clearly tell this is all for VFX purposes. um and then you can see this shot here, Superman's suit is again charred up.
The
So
charred
wherever this
up.
happens, it
Yeah.
looks like this is after all the action has happened. And again, this is a shot of James Gunn sort of setting up his camera to maybe like shoot some behind the scenes footage of the dozers taking down everything.
Maybe, yeah.
um yeah, and then what I like about this shot here is he doesn't have the cape on, and they're doing just
Yeah.
like a close up. And I mean, I just love the silhouette again. I mean, and with all the charring of the suit, um, but I mean the bulge is just kind of gone. I don't really notice anything, so it's just more a matter of you're seeing Superman just standing there looking up at something. It looks like it's in the middle of a fight, and then he's gonna take it from there. And what do you think he's looking at here? Like, what do you? Because it looks like this is not
Maybe
quite
he's
at the
mapping
end of
something
the fight
out.
sequence.
Entirely
Yeah.
possible. Like, oh, hey, it's coming from here. I just also really like about this picture, like how just badass David Corenswet looks. He's like all
Mm-hmm.
like dingy from the action sequences, like with the makeup, and then he's just
Mm-hmm.
wearing this like dark black coat cloak.
Yeah.
And it just looks badass. Like I know that has nothing to do with what is actually happening in the scene. I
He
just
looks
think
like
that
a
looks cool.
Jedi.
Yeah,
He looks like a Jedi.
or a Sith.
um, it's also but like this shot here, like I love this one. Like this is great.
Yeah, that's
I
great
think
too.
this
I
is
mean, yeah.
because you could again the suit. So one thing I wanted to kind of talk about a little is the material of the suit, like in the movie itself, because we have seen in like for example Man of Steel, even though he fights like Kryptonians, his suit doesn't seem to take a ton of damage, or at least not like charring, right?
Mm,
Here you could tell the suit is definitely charred up, like to the point where the logo is almost invisible. Like it's hard to see the logo beyond just like the yellow bit that you can really see. And we saw the same thing with the original the first official image of Superman, where you could see his suit is pretty charred up. So
mhm.
what does that say about the makeup of the suit? Like, is it a suit that is made on Earth, or do you think this is a Kryptonian suit?
I think it's one of those cases. It could be either. I'd like to think it's, a Ma Kent made suit, and then it's like, oh, how the fuck does it survive all this stuff? It's like, just don't think about it. Just like, kind of like how like when people are shooting bullets at Superman, and it's just a regular. He's wearing regular fabric, and and his clothes don't fucking shred away like Luke Cage's does. It's just don't think about it too hard. Just like don't think about it too
I
hard.
get
That's
okay, I
all.
get that.
Um, so I would prefer that, but with how like kind of for lack of a better word, over designed the suit is, it doesn't seem it. I think it might be of Kryptonian origin. I'm not totally sure, but I wouldn't mind either because
Yeah.
with the synopsis that was given, we
Mm-hmm.
had um he's getting more in touch with his Kryptonian heritage. So if
Mm-hmm.
he's going for that with the suit, then awesome. But if it is a homemade suit, even though it does like kind of look over designed, I'd accept that too. I'd accept both easily.
Yeah. To me, it just looks like there's certain elements to it. Just the belt alone, I'm like, it looks a little homemade. Like
Yeah.
that belt. Like, what purpose does that really serve in a military? Anyway, we'll get to find that out.
Hmm.
Also, I know we've been sort of stuck on the whole super bulge the last couple of weeks, but hey,
Hmm.
today we got a lot of super booty, so there's
Yeah.
that. There's also that.
Yeah. Got a
What do
dump
you think
truck,
about
not gonna
the?
lie.
Wait, what did you say?
He's got a dump truck, not gonna lie.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Uh,
I gotta give credit where credit is due, all right? Like, don't at me with that
it's
shit.
fair. It's fair. It's fair. Fiona has a question. Let me pop this on screen here. This is a good one
Mm.
because I think since you're talking about the costume, this is definitely worth we're touching upon because I'm interested, right? Like depending on the material of the suit, do you think this is the kind of suit that you would actually have to get dry cleaned, or is it laundry safe? Can like the Spider-Man
Uh,
suit in those Andrew Garfield movies, you can just toss it into his washing machine at home? Like I
I
wonder, right? Like
mean,
it's
I think that could work. That would be
you think
fun.
so?
I think so. Yeah, fuck it. Why not? It works. I mean,
Do you think he
Kryptonian.
throws the
I don't think
trunks in
Kryptonian
separately?
clothes would shrink, right? Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it's what about like the trunks? Do you think the trunks go in separately? The cape and the boots probably you can't really throw in the washing machine. I don't know. I'm just and the rest of
Uh,
it.
yeah, the boots. Maybe you could like just get like some shoe shiner and just like get the red one, and then just
Yeah.
or
Yep.
maybe he could. That would be a funny scene. That would be a very James Gunn scene where he'd like he comes out with his like new fresh like suit where it's like all nice and clean, but he knows my boots are kind of scuffed up, and he sees a shoe shiner, and he's just like, hey,
Yeah.
can we like touch these up real quick? And he's like, yeah, sure thing, Superman. And then no charge. And then he's like, no, come on, you're the backbone of America. And then he tips him like $5, and then he goes on his merry way. I could
That would be a
that
very
would be a
James
really
Gunn thing
cute
to do.
scene.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course here then you have a close up shot where he's got the cape back on. So he's not. I mean, after he's done with all the flying, they're shooting as much of it practically as they possibly can. We even have a shot where he's sort of like checking on his hair a little bit. It's like, yeah, does everything look right? Like it's all there. So,
Yeah.
um, what kind? So I'm wondering now,
Mm,
how does all of this get put together? Because yesterday we were talking about this, the idea that we've sort of seen many pieces of the jigsaw puzzle.
yeah.
Where do you think this kind of fits in? Do you think this is after Guy Gardner shows up? This is before, like
I think
the
this is gonna
Terrifics,
be
or
after,
yeah,
like, it just feels like this is kind of like a sweet aftermath scene. Like it's gonna be like a smaller scene. Maybe it's him saving the squirrel. Maybe it's not. It maybe I think it would either be right before or right after. One of the two. Like right before he like he's saving people and then he sees like a squirrel and then he saves it and then he goes off and then meets up with the Terrifics and Guy Gardner's like, hey, and then that's it. And then we have or it could be like right after a sort of like a cute like sort of like levity kind of breath of levity
yeah.
kind of scene where we have it so like, oh, he saves a squirrel and then it's like aha, tongue in cheek, and then it cuts to the next
Yeah.
like actual scene, you know. So
I mean, what I love is like we've seen him saving. He saves a girl. He saves a bunch of people. He saves kids. He saves a squirrel. I mean, is it out of a tree? We don't know. He clearly at some point he's flying the squirrel across like
yeah.
a public square. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how these pieces all tie together.
Oh yeah.
Um, do you think he's gonna save a cat at some point, or are we just gonna go with the squirrel? Is the
I don't
squirrel is
know,
the
that
best
might
we're
be a
gonna
little
do?
bit too on the nose. Like, because that's like sort of like the big thing that people make fun of Superman
Yeah.
for. I could see it working if like James Gunn does like a tongue in cheek sort of thing, like he goes to save a cat, and then it
Mm-hmm.
like it's like, and then it like claws at
Yeah.
him,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah. That'd be a
and
very
then he's
cat
like, you
thing to
know
do.
what,
Yeah.
fuck this, I'm out of here, or like,
Just grab the squirrel instead. He's like, you don't want to be saved. That's
and
your
then it's like,
loss.
or like he grabs it and he's kind of like ah, and then it's like, and then he's like
Yeah.
ah, and then it's like oh, and then it would be funny. Superman's like, I mean, I love animals, but cats are just ugh. And then he like
It
walks
just yeah.
away.
Yep.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, like just to show like a meta take on the whole scene a little bit, but also don't like take away from Superman like fucking hate cats
Yeah.
and then like chucks it,
I mean,
like nothing like that.
yeah.
Or but you know,
And it's also one of those things where we're seeing like a ton of pictures. They probably did multiple takes. Of course they did, but it might be like it's cut, 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 and squirrels on the ground and Superman's off to the next thing. It's probably not a very long sequence. In fact, in a lot of these movies, like in the Spider-Man movies recently, they would shoot Tom Holland doing a lot of the action, but then in post production they might be like, you know what, it's just better to just do a whole CGI double the whole time because it's just moving so quick. It's just easier to match certain elements together, especially if like one element is going to be CGI, you might as well make the whole thing CGI. And if you're not seeing his face, certainly, if you're seeing his face, that's the hardest thing to CGI. So you want to get something for real there. So this could be something where we are seeing, obviously, people looking at something in the sky. That one particular extra is really, awestruck by something happening up there. Meanwhile, Superman is probably doing his thing. You can tell he's getting used to the wires here. There's probably a little bit of a balancing act. We had that
mm-hmm.
blue man on set the other day. I think that blue man was just there to sort of help, Mr. Terrific get his balance. Um, I do enjoy how you know what they might be doing? They might be doing a photo scan here of the squirrel or like trying to get like reference photography because you can see
Yeah,
the
no, yeah,
camera
you've
right
said that
there.
before. Yeah.
Yeah, really, it looks like one of those cameras from back in the day when, you had to kind of open the like from the 1910s or something, where you like say cheese and then they open the shutter and then they close it and it exposes the film. It looks like one of those things, but you can also see there's a guy there with the wheel. That's the first AC pulling focus on the squirrel,
Mm-hmm.
while he's in a little cage. So chances are the squirrel's gonna get CGI'd completely,
Oh
but they're
yeah,
trying to get
most
his
definitely.
motion
Yeah.
and all the other elements like the texture of the fur, all of those things right. Um, what I also love about these scenes that they've shot in the city in Cleveland is the scale because you each and every day virtually we have seen at least dozens, if not maybe 100 or so people out there as extras just around the street in Metropolis. Um, so it definitely looks like they're doing this on a pretty large scale, and I really do appreciate that. What are your thoughts on, again, just how the budget of this movie, which is $200 million, is being put to use so far? Because it can't be
Yeah,
cheap to have
it's
Cleveland to yourself for 2 weeks in a row and be in downtown filming.
yeah, it's like again, it's just so funny because I remember seeing a report earlier today. I don't know if it was today or like some time ago, but uh Delphria, who plays the engineer, she's like, yeah, it's really great working on a set. And it's like, it's weird how that's a selling point now. It's weird how it's like, oh, being shot on an actual practical location
Right.
rather than a soundstage. Like, that's a selling point now. To not have it be on a
And
fucking blue screen. Like, it's like, that's just like so depressing. I mean, it reminds me of how people are like for instance, I think it was oh, what's his name? Fede Alvarez doing the newest Alien movie. He's like, "Oh yeah, it's practical. I used practical effects because that's what he does. He's mainly a practical effects guy. But he's like, yeah, it's all practical. People are like, oh yeah, it's all practical. I'm like, that shouldn't be a selling point. That should be expected. Practical filmmaking should not be a selling point for your movie, but we're just so absorbed with CGI and all of that that practical filmmaking is a selling point now, which is just really fucking sad to me.
I mean,
It's
it's
just
also
I understand like with
it.
blockbusters and stuff like that, but like it's just kind of sad as all a little
I
bit.
mean, but ultimately, as far as practical filming goes, it's also a bit bit misleading because actors will say, "Oh, we shot it practically," and that leads people to believe that they did indeed shoot it practically, and that's what
Mhm.
ended up on screen. Whereas what sometimes happens is, like, you will shoot stuff practically, like in Top Gun Maverick, they shot all the plane scenes practically, but they were shooting a different plane. It's another jet, like, that pilots practice with, but they didn't use the actual F-18s that the Navy. It was too expensive and too precious, those planes to kind of be just used in the filming. So they shot real planes and pilots and actors in real planes, but then the planes themselves were replaced with the F-18s in post production. So what you're looking at was very much CGI, but it was shot practically at some point along the way, similar to what you're seeing here, where Superman's cape obviously will be, part practical but part CG because you don't see the whole thing. It might also be that they're doing close-ups, so you don't really need Superman's cape. But if they needed it, they could easily just add it in. Man of Steel did a lot of this with their action sequences, where Henry Cavill just didn't have any cape on; he just had tracking markers on his shoulders. But also here, you can see that the Squirrel is gonna probably end up being completely CGI because they can't quite get the real Squirrel to do what they would want it to do. Because when Superman is actually trying to interact with the Squirrel, you can see he doesn't have anything there physically.
Yeah.
He's just sort of like, and then it's up to the VFX artist to kind of animate a squirrel to kind of fit the contours of its hand, so that when he's putting it down, it all makes sense. And they probably do multiple takes to make sure he gets it right. And then you
Hmm.
do the reference shot to make sure the lighting and all that interactivity with the real scene works, which is, I think that's a great way to approach it from a VFX standpoint. But again, shooting practically could mean many different things. Shooting practically could be they're literally out in Cleveland in public square like they are here, or they could shoot practically like what they did with Top Gun Maverick, where virtually everything on screen is CG by the end of by the time you get it into a movie theater, but the original plate photography was done for real. It's just it could be augmented. I think it's when actors talk about it, they're usually talking about it from the perspective of we shot it practically and we had practical elements for us to interact with and react to and act with, and as opposed to just working with a CG. Because if you remember back in like when the Phantom Menace was coming out and like George Lucas was digital filmmaking, and they literally had like Ewan McGregor acting to a ball, for Jar Jar Binks or stuff, like, and they didn't have any practicality to it. Nowadays the approach is you put a person there, so the actors have something to work with, and you can replace the entire person because the technology is good enough that you could do something like what they're doing here with a real squirrel, and then they'll be able to, like, crop
Hmm.
it out completely and replace it. It's expensive, it's not
Exactly. Yeah.
cheap, but it certainly from an actor's perspective, it gives them
Hmm.
something, that's more tangible to work with and react to on set.
Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, the scale of this film is amazing. And um, by the way, Morkatna, I think we haven't really seen you comment before, so welcome to the show. And he's mentioning that he's really starting to love, how
Yeah,
the
the
suit
Superman
is
suit. Yeah.
playing out for
And he's
Superman.
like, he liked how, Adam Warlock was filmed in Guardians 3. Although James
Mm-hmm.
Gunn did say that's not the approach to flying that he's going to be doing with Superman, because it's like it's a very different character, it's a very different way of
Yeah.
like flying and how that works. So it's not going to be exactly like that. But I assume like he's going to take notes of that and like apply it here as sort of like, guy wearing a cape and, flying and all that. And then there's also, like digging the suit. Yeah, it's a really great suit. And soup suit. Ha. So I'm just like I'm optimistic on this because it's like I was when we were doing research for like some of the stuff later on, and I was I think John Campia was doing something about it. I don't really like his videos that much, but sometimes he has news. So um
Yeah.
but I'd like almost all the comments of like the set photos of like Guy Gardner and Hawker. They're like, oh yeah, this is gonna be the worst fucking movie this year. This is gonna flop. This is gonna
Come on,
suck. Like so many people were like, oh yeah, Guy Gardner's haircut looks stupid, and I'm like, I don't know what you guys are smoking, but like I don't know what these people are expecting with this. Um, you know, honestly, the more I look at it though, hold on, go back one photo for a sec. Go back to the blue. I'm no, the next one. I'm really looking at that. It looks like Anthony Kerrigan's body type. I genuinely believe that's Metamorpho. I know
you
like
think
he's
so?
balancing, maybe that's just like an in-between shot, but I'm like looking at it and I think I'm pretty sure that's him. Like he's bald, he doesn't have like a lot of shape to him, and I think that's Metamorpho. Like we said like maybe it's just him there kind of balancing, and maybe he does. I mean, obviously we do see him kind of like touching terrific like before, but like
Right there,
maybe
yeah.
that was an in between shot. Maybe that's just him like helping out his friend like in the scene, like oh whoa oh look, or he can make a joke like oh looks like you don't have as much control of that. Let me help you out, and he is kind of reaching, and Metamorpho can like shapeshift. So honestly, I kept looking at this set photo, and I think that's Metamorpho. I think that's Anthony Kerrigan. I think that's Metamorpho because Metamorpho has been a major, you know, like kind of is I don't okay, maybe not a major superhero, but like he's a big part of like the Mr. Terrific sort of thing in the comics, like being a part of the Terrifics. He's the only other major hero that's part of that team here because as we know, Plastic Man nor Phantom Girl are not in this movie. So I think that I'm pretty sure that's Metamorpho. If I had to put money on it, I think that's like I want to say 70-30 it's Metamorpho. Like, I don't think that's just a guy there because I'm kind of looking at him and his eyes look like Anthony because Anthony Kerrigan has very noticeable, he has very sunken in eyes. So like I know it's far away and maybe I'll look like an idiot once the movie comes out and it's just like, he's not there, but I don't know. I'm convinced that that's him. Not like 100%, but enough. But that's just my
It's
thoughts.
difficult. I mean, it's for me, it's a little hard to believe because I still think that's like a VFX thing. But you're right. Like the figure sort of works. It's just we never saw him like that blue man, and like once the actors start walking forward towards the crowd, he's only seemingly there for some of those shots where Mr. Terrific and Hawk are all in the air, right? Because once we keep going, once we get past that point, the blue man is gone
And
completely.
here, but here's the thing. Go back to that one. Go back to the blue suit. Why are his eyes not covered? Usually, more often than
Well,
not, it's like, why would they? But
but
like
but,
specifically the
but they
eyes,
can cut
though.
him out, like because they're gonna cut out the
No, I
contours of
know
the
they can cut out
person,
everything. I
so
know when
it's just a
Sean
safety
Gunn
thing at that
was the
point.
Rocket Raccoon,
Yeah,
when he was the stand-in, his whole face was because it's like, okay, they're doing it anyway, but they specifically, it's the eyes. I don't know. I just think that's a very interesting sort of way of doing it, I guess. Like it's specifically his eyes. I don't know. Maybe it's nothing. It's probably nothing, but I think that means something. I'm trying, trying to analyze, trying to really analyze this stuff, and like that's an
I
interesting, very interesting
I'm
sort of
still
thing.
on the fence. I'm still on the fence about that. But I do have another fan theory regarding Guy Gardner's Green Lantern. Um, the synopsis for the Green Lantern series that we let me see if I can pull this up. Do you remember the synopsis for the Green Lantern series? Because I think it has something to do with like a murder happening, right?
Yeah.
Um, let me see if I can find it because I think it connects directly to Guy Gardner in some way. So I have the IMDb pulled up. Let me put it on screen. So there it is. Lanterns follow new recruit John Stewart. So John Stewart is new, and Lantern legend Hal Jordan. So it looks like that means he might be coming back into the fore. Like he may not be the current Lantern, or he's clearly the veteran.
Mhm.
And they're both gonna get dragged into what looks like a dark Earth-based mystery, and this is the key part, as they investigate a murder in the American heartland. I don't know where Metropolis is exactly located within the United States, but I know Smallville is in the heartland, in the Midwest. It's meant to be
Mhm.
sort of like Kansas, right? It's in Kansas. Um, and then, of course, you have, let's just say Metropolis is like a Cleveland, right? Cleveland is, you would say, in the heartland of the United States. So in the American heartland, and why are the Lanterns investigating this of all the different characters? My
Right.
theory is that somehow, and I know that James Gunn said he's not just bringing in Nathan Fillion for a quick cameo, but I have a theory that Guy Gardner somehow ends up getting himself killed, and that what leads us into the Lanterns TV series, and that's
I
the tipping
You
point.
had me for a lot of that, but once you say Guy Gardner gets killed, no way they're gonna kill off Guy Gardner. Like, yeah, he's not
Well,
the most popular Green Lantern, but he still is a fan favorite. So I don't think they're gonna kill him off that quickly, especially when you have a big name like Nathan Fillion. If it was like some podunk guy out or character actor, I'd be like, yeah, sure.
yeah,
Nathan Fillion's a
but
pretty big
it's
name. He's a big fan casted name too as Green Lantern. And so if I was with you, I would say if I were to say anything, I would say Guy Gardner is is seen as the murderer of the crime, and John Stewart and Hal Jordan have to prove him innocent. I think that would be really interesting because Guy Gardner is seen as like the
yeah.
douchey guy who doesn't fucking take anything seriously. So having him be like this, like murder, maybe as this murderer, that could be really interesting. But I don't think they would kill off Guy Gardner so quickly. That would be a big like shot in the foot. Like people would be pissed. And not a lot, not as many if they kill off Hal Jordan, but a lot of people would be upset if they kill off Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner because a lot of people like Nathan Fillion and quite a few people, not everybody, but quite a few people like Guy Gardner. So I don't think that they would do that, but it's an interesting idea.
I mean, okay, but why would the Lanterns be investigating a murder in the Heartland? Like that to me, that's the reason why I'm thinking about it, right? Because it has to be, why are the Lanterns drawn into this particular
Well, they
situation? As
they
I know
are
we're off
Earth is
topic, it's
part of
not the
that
movie, but
sector, so there is
hmm?
that. I mean, Earth
So
is
what?
part of their sector. They protect that sector, so it's entirely possible that it's just like
Yeah.
a really like maybe another dead Green Lantern is there, and Guy Gardner's off world or something. So they have Hal and John doing it. So I mean, it could be anything, but I don't think. Yeah, just the murder of Guy Gardner would be a weird decision. But it is Tom King, and he sucks. So you know what? I bet that'll happen. You know what? Tom King, Damon Lindelof, yeah, they would do that. I could see them doing that. Yeah, no, I take back everything I said. Since these brain dead fuckwads are in charge of the Lantern Show, that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to kill off Guy Gardner, and then people are going to be pissed, and then people are going to wonder, like, whoa, why did we make Tom King the fucking like one of the executive producers? Because you're stupid, and Tom King is an idiot, and so you know what? Now I'm 100%. I'm not on board with it because it's dumb, but I do think now it's going to happen because that would be something. Oh yeah, we're going to kill off the fucking Green Lantern nobody gives a fuck about, and it's like, yeah, I could see that happening. Yeah, let's go with it. That's the theory of the night. They're going to kill off Guy Gardner. Yep. Let's go with it.
It's I mean, okay, it's just a theory, and it's not even from today's shoot, but also it looks like we have the lightning thief with a comment that I think we've sort of tried to address this before, but and I think James Gunn has also sort of mentioned this, that it's very much a Superman movie. But I mean, he's worried that this is starting to become just a cluster F where you've got just so many characters, and it's fair. You've got a lot of super characters in this. You've already seen the engineer. We have seen Hawkgirl. We have seen at least one Green Lantern that's confirmed with Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner. We have got Mr. Terrific. We might get Maxwell Lord. We're gonna get Lex Luthor in there. There may be a secondary villain. There's that mystery character in the full
Mm-hmm.
costume with a U. We don't know who that is. We even have Rick Flex, senior, and I'm sure there's beyond that. We have got the entire Daily Planet cast in there too. Those are supporting characters, but we've got a bunch of supers already in this. But it still feels like a Superman story. Like, just by the fact that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, all these set photos, there's one actor and one character that's consistently been on set each and every day. That's David Corenswet Superman. I don't think a single day has gone by where David Cornsweat Superman has not been out there. Like, Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Terrific showed up for the first couple of days, then he went away until yesterday. Guy Gardner didn't show up until yesterday, and Hawkgirl, Isabella Merced as well. But Superman, David Cornsweat has been there this whole time. And I mean, speaking of Hawkgirl, though, I did want to dive into a little bit more of her suit, because yesterday we were going over some of the pictures. We had some more pictures come in later on where you could see her without the headgear on. It looks like this is
Mm-hmm.
when she's leaving the set. And you get a closer look at her suit and a little bit more of the detail.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly Maxwell Lord, Lord Tech logo is there, which we talked about. But she's got the gauntlets. The headgear is not there. It looks like this is after she's done filming.
Mm-hmm.
Are you starting to kind of like the suit more, or do you still? I mean, because for all we know, this suit it might be one that we're stuck with till the end of the movie. Like, we may not get another look at her original suit until after this movie is already done. Like, what are your thoughts on just
Yeah, I think
if we're stuck with this suit because that's what we
I
get
don't
for the
the
movie?
thing is I'm not like I will say I think it fits her more than it fits Guy Gardner because Guy Gardner has such like a iconic Green Lantern suit. Like Hal and John, just Cruz, Simon Vaz, they all have like their own touches, and I really like that. But Guy Gardner's is the most fun because it's Guy Gardner. Like
Yeah,
it's great. So I think like seeing that like kind of it's mainly white, it's not a lot of green, and it's like, oh, okay. So that's where I personally don't care for it. But like Hawk Girl, it's not as it's the thing that we come to see when it comes to Hawk Girl is the mace, the headgear, and the wings. Like the wings are CGI, so we won't be able to see those until the actual movie, or like if there's like a poster or something. But like the headgear looks great, the mace looks great, and I like the jacket and gauntlet sort of thing. But it's just like I'm a bit more accepting of her because even though I don't like how the pant is supposed to look like a boot and it looks like she's wearing shorts, I think that's a little awkward. But like, yeah, I'm more accepting of her because it looks okay. Guy Garner just looks a little bit too weird. But in terms of this, I forget who said this yesterday, but in terms of the storyline, it works because it's clearly a Lord Tech funded super team. And he's going to make them wear stupid matching outfits. And he's like, oh, yeah, this will be good for the investors. This is good for the board. They like this. White is very pure because we're good heroes. Like that kind of thing. Like that they're definitely going to like kind of pull that sort of thing. So
yeah.
I'm accepting of it. Like I understand like it's definitely for storytelling purposes, like it's part of it. and seeing the Lord Tech logo as well. It's like it's obvious. So I'm not shaking my fist at it. I just hope we get to see those more like iconic costumes later on in another film, wherever these guys show up. So, I hope for that, but with what we have here, I'm not mad because it's
Yeah.
obviously for the story. So
Yeah. Also, like, yeah, we didn't go over these pictures because this same sequence after the Guy Gardner's made a fool of himself and whatnot. It looks like Superman sort of becomes concerned at something, and he kind of stops him, like, "Hey, man, stop yapping." And then he, goes looking for something in the crowd. You can see here Superman is clearly trying to find, and like he's looking through people. Do you think his
yeah,
extra vision comes into play? There's a threat, like they're like, okay, we saved the day, and yet something else is happening. My mind is going
that's
to
really cool.
Lex Luthor in a hood, walking
I
about
really
with
like that.
scars, and you could see Superman is looking for something or someone, and then there's more pictures there. I mean, this is I think after the shoot here, but you could see here. This is a great
He's like
example of like he's
determined.
he's
Yeah,
determined. There's something going on that has not been accounted for, and this looks like this is
yeah,
clearly after Superman and the rest of the JLI have
yeah.
done a lot of
Maybe
work to
he's
save
maybe
people.
yeah.
But
I really like that. That's a really good idea. Like he's telling Guy
yeah,
Gardner like because he's like maybe
like
he's not as
you can hear
familiar
it.
with the
Yeah.
Terrifics.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe because Guy Gardner is like acting like the leader, he goes to him or something, and he
Yeah.
doesn't know Mr. Terrific that well and that kind of thing. And he's like, Guy, or what's your name? Green Lantern? Okay, Lantern. I don't think this is done yet. This was too easy. Like, what do you think? He's like, oh, it's fine. We stopped the villain. It's fine. Like, go home, man. Clean your suit. Fucking get rid of that cape too. You look like an idiot. And then
Yeah.
because he's look like come on, dude. Like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like, that's their one F bomb. Guy Gardner,
Yeah.
shut the fuck up, Superman. Like, just change your name, change your suit, get out of here. We're done. We got this. It's cool. And then he's like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I got this nagging feeling. He hears something, he sees something. When you see something, say something. And that's what Superman's trying to do. He's like trying to look for something. Maybe it's X-ray vision, maybe it's not, but I like that. I really like that idea of like there's another threat, like maybe
Mm-hmm.
like Lex Luthor implanted something in somebody and he can only see with his X-ray vision. Maybe it's a
Like
bomb. Maybe it's like a just like
I mean,
he just hears
here he
something. I don't know.
ultimately ends
He
up
runs.
running
Yeah.
through and out to wherever he's going. I
Yeah.
wonder again what because James Gunn at some point he's got a microphone in his hand in these photos and he's like directing the crowd like how to react, and he's
Yeah.
because you'll often see in big scenes like this the director's calling the action beats, and because
Yeah.
the audio is all gonna get ADR'd in the post production, so they're gonna dub it over anyway. But
Yeah.
you get to
Although,
so the crowd can react
yeah.
to what's going on, especially if it's
Yeah. Yeah.
CGI
Yeah.
elements and you don't see them,
Yeah.
So
Right. And then they have all that. Yeah. And another thing I like about this crowd, try to go to one of the other pictures. I know this is gonna seem weird. Like this picture. Look at like again, I know we keep going back to this, and I'm sorry we keep mentioning this, but like look at the wardrobe of this crowd.
they don't
It's
quite look like they
so
all belong in 2024.
it looks like you have this chick in a leather jacket, you have like a plaid sweater vest, you have a
Yeah,
woman wearing an ascot, you have this suede jacket, you have another leather jacket. Like all these people wearing like this brown, like you have one of those old school backpacks. Like there's a lot of brown in this, and that's very 70.
yeah.
The 70s was very like brown and orange and like those like darker, ugly, warm colors.
Mhm. Earthy earth
Like
tones. Yeah.
earth tones. Yes, thank you. Earth
Yeah.
tones like puke green and shit brown and like burnt orange, like all these ugly. That's the vibe I'm getting. Like the guy in the cardigan and like sure you have
Mhm.
like I mean they're normal. Like it's nothing like too noticeable in terms of the actual wardrobe, but it does look a bit old fashioned. Obviously, as we keep saying, I mean it definitely takes place in present day because they have camera phones. Like now you got
Right.
me saying camera phones. Jesus Christ. They have
They have smartphones.
they
They
have
have
smartphones.
smartphones.
They have smartphones. God, God, now I feel like an idiot. they have smartphones. So obviously it takes place in present day. Like
Yeah,
like clearly the set photos we saw last week, they're holding iPhones, except for that one
they're
old woman.
holding
It looked like she
phones.
was
Yeah.
holding a Nokia. But yeah, it looks like a very 70s vibe, and that adds to the timeless feel of it. Like we have that very 70s vibe. Like you have like these earth tones where it's not like, and a lot of like sweater vests and
Hmm.
cardigans and like very orange brownie jackets and like, he's wearing plaid pants. Like wait, go back to that one. Go back to that one. See the Asian guy behind the woman with
I
the
mean, but
sweater
that's
vest?
but
Those
yeah,
plaid
but
pants, that's like something my grandfather used to wear.
yeah, but
Like,
people wear that today. That's
I
again,
know it's like
okay.
they have
That
like the
one else,
hipster geek chic sort of thing. I'm not
yeah,
saying it's like
it's
totally out of nowhere, but even then, like I'm looking at this guy, and he looks like, I don't know, maybe like 30. So yeah, he can maybe be a hipster. But then you have
mhm.
like all these older people, like this woman right here. She's wearing like wingtips with no socks and like
It's
green pants and a sweater
yeah,
vest. So like it just looks very like not like the wardrobe is not present day. And I like that. I'm not
it
complaining. I like the vibe they're going for. We
yeah,
have that very old school vibe, and it's just like
yeah.
we're adding that timeless feel to it. I really like that. Yeah, sure. We have like modern stuff. Like you got somebody in like cargo pants. You have like a lot of, obviously not this one because this isn't extras. This is the camera crew. But we do have like, yeah, and then you also have like Converse, which are pretty timeless. I mean, Converse have been around since like the 50s. So,
It,
and
it has a classic feel to it ultimately. Like it doesn't
yeah,
quite just that it's not like again, and I hate to kind of make it feel like it's a one versus the other, but the most recent example of another Superman is the Henry Cavill version,
yeah,
and the iteration of Metropolis we got there felt very
right.
much for the here and the now.
The here
This
and the now,
feels a
yeah,
bit more timeless, more Art Deco, a little bit more like the Brendan Routh Superman Returns, where you kind
yeah.
of got a bit more of a classic feel. Like this movie sort of
Which
exists
is
out of time.
definitely the best
It's
aesthetic out of all the Superman
yeah.
films. I know the movie wasn't very good. It has its moments, and Brandon Routh does try his best, but I do love that aesthetic. Like, I know people are gonna like, oh, but Superman Returns sucks. Yeah, I know, but like, I love that feel of like it's, and I said this when we were, I forget what episode it was. It was so long ago. It was sometime last month, I
Mhm.
think, like early last month, if I remember at least a little bit. Like I was saying, like the Art Deco thing, which I was so excited about when the Daily Planet set photos were released, and you have just like again a Metropolis out of time, like a Gotham out of time, like kind of like what the animated series was, as I mentioned before.
Mhm.
Like yeah, that's what the girl's wearing. It looks and feels very 70s,
Yeah.
and I really like that. Like it just like it like feels like time stopped here almost. Like it kind of like um I don't know what would be a good like it's like Groundhog Day where it's like this, like they keep reliving the same day over and over again in like 1975,
Mm,
but
yep.
they somehow got modern technology, like and I don't know, that's just like cute to me. And then he's like hanging out with the kids and like he's saving the kids, and it's all cute, and he's like making sure they're okay. I mean, the little girl from the tank explosion truck, she looks,
Yeah.
I mean, if I were to guess, it's after that, and she looks okay. And I don't know, it's just like it's just nice to me. I'm like, even if the movie isn't great, like I love the aesthetic, like I love the combination of everything. Like look, like we see this little girl, like she's wearing a plaid dress with a mustard yellow long sleeve shirt, and then right next to her we have Mr. Terrific in a Mr. Terrific in like a flying military jetpack. Like
Yeah. It feels
that's
very like the animated series did a great job with this. I
yeah.
think like where they had all the DC
That's
animated stuff
also
over
a
the
good
last,
idea. Yes.
you
I
know,
like what this guy's saying, so it's more
yeah, Kiev
yes.
definitely the earth tones will help the red and the blue really stand out. Even the white and the black of like the Mr. Terrific with the
Yeah.
red the fairway, like that's always also standing out. And like you said, yeah, the girl that he goes to save is happens to be there, which kind of implies again this sequence happens
Mhm.
before
Yeah.
they're out there being congratulated. Where of course Nathan Fillion's Green Lantern wants to take all the credit, whereas Superman seems like he's done all the
He's
work.
just like, I want
Um,
guy. I just want to make sure these. Well, he wouldn't say guy. He's like GL.
yeah,
I just want to make sure these kids are okay. Like, calm down, boy.
yeah,
He's like, and then he's like, cash app,
Cash App, Groupon. I'll
Venmo.
I'll take Groupon. The Watcher had a great comment about it
I even
yesterday.
take Zelle. It's built into your
I
bank app.
take
Like, all right, it's cool.
built into your bank app. PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, and Venmo me. Um,
Even if you got some
but again,
change, if you got some pennies in your
yeah,
pocket, like, I got
it's
you.
all.
Like this.
But
That's that. So I'm
it's
sorry to cut. I'm so sorry to cut you off.
yeah.
But like, speaking of change in pockets, this definitely seems like a Metropolis that would still have phone booths all around.
You're right.
And we might be getting that
You could
classic
definitely sell
scene.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, like because I remember what they could do is if sort of like kind of have that old school aesthetic with a phone booth. But I remember like this was something that New York was gonna do. Like I remember reading this about that's like 10 years ago, and then it never became anything. It was probably too expensive. But they were gonna convert phone booths into Wi-Fi hotspots and then
Oh,
like so in
that's
order to
really
like
clever.
integrate like old school technology to new school technology, that could be a really interesting thing here, like again sort of having like a long range of technology. So you have these earth-based tones, the art, like you have the art deco from the 20s, you have the earth-based tones from the 70s, and then you have very modern stuff. Like sure, you have a phone booth, but it's really a Wi-Fi hotspot that you can use your smartphone with. That could be really cool. Like again, sort of that timeless sort of like it's
Yeah.
kind of has a little bit of everything, and we could get that classic scene of Superman going into a phone booth, changing, and that. So yeah, the coin thing made me think of that. But yeah, I think that would be a
You know
really
what I
fun
also
idea.
like?
They wouldn't
The
do that, but it
police.
sounds fun.
What also adds to that idea is that the police cars in this movie that they're using
Yes,
are all Crown Wicks. They're not like the
I
newer
remember you
ones
mentioning that.
the
Yeah.
newer Ford. We talked about it. It's like a small detail, but like remember in like in the Flash and some of the other recent DC and even Marvel movies, you see
Hmm.
like these new like the ones that you see on the streets today in the U.S. Whereas they're going with these old Crown Vics, which are virtually all been cycled out all across the country. But in this movie, they have them, which again is a small detail, but it adds to the
Yeah.
ambiance of this feeling a little more timeless and even a little more back in time, if you will. I mean, these pieces on set that you got a picture of today, it looks like they're just either they were already used when we had all the crash scene, the big
Hmm.
crash scene where the Daily Planet staff was coming out of a ship of some kind
That's exactly
last
what I'm
week.
thinking.
It could also be that they will end up reusing them. You could see they have
Yeah.
like some stuff like bagged up because it might be weather sensitive. Um,
Hmm.
I want to get into this for a second
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
to know what's going on here. I know we touched upon it earlier. It doesn't look like this would be the kind of sequence where cars are being crumbled up, like or like being thrown around, and like you would in a Michael Bay movie where you got the Bayham and the Transformers fighting in front of it or something like that. This looks a little more like somebody is deliberately pushing these and crushing them and moving them out of the way.
Yeah. I do think it.
Do you think
Yeah.
this is what is this part of the movie and how does it fit in? Is it a Green
It
Lantern thing we
just
touched
makes
upon it earlier,
sense
or
that like Guy Gardner would like do this
yeah,
to try and clean up, because I mean, again, you can kind of see the white spots. Like the photo's kind of grainy. We apologize for that, but you can kind of see the spots on the roof, on the side, like those little white tags. I think there's a green one on top. Like I don't know. It's probably nothing. It's probably like warning labels or something, and we're just looking too much into it. But, and to be fair, we don't really need trackers anymore, as we've mentioned
no,
before,
no.
because I mean, the technology has gotten so good that we don't really need them anymore.
They can
I mean,
remove
I'm sure
those
they
two
help, but
dozers
yeah.
completely
So I
if they wanted
do
to.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I think it's Guy Gardner clearing it out with his ring, and they're just gonna make them green in post.
Or like
So
they don't even have to be dozers, it could be whatever his imagination really
right,
that's the
it could
idea
be
behind the
like just a
lanterns.
giant like a giant like a scraper. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they can map those out and then just use those. That's also a good idea. But like he kind of came from a rough background. I think his dad was a construction guy in the comics, or like if I remember correctly, I'm probably misremembering, but so he may be like Guy Gardner. Oh yeah, I'll use a fucking bulldozer. So that's what kind of does. And yeah, because the exactly, like I'm really
Yeah.
looking at this because they're moving them out like to the
Mm-hmm.
sorry, my hand. They're moving them to the side. It's not like, it's not simply like, oh, they're what's the word? They drive forward, crush them a bit, and then they move back. They're pushing them. They're pushing them to the side. So I definitely am with you that I think it's Guy Gardner's ring, whether it's actual bulldozers and they're gonna make them green, or he just invented something way better and they're gonna mat all these out and then just use something
Yeah.
else. Um, I definitely believe you there.
By the way, there's a question here from GBO, and he asked if that girl in the yellow dress is a reference to the cat in the tree that Christopher Reeve Superman saved, and then her mom slept. I don't remember exactly what that girl was wearing in the movie, but if that is indeed what that is, I mean, it could be a reference. We know that Will Reeve is going to be in this movie, so we have got like the Reeves family, sign off and seal of approval for this film, which is great
It
because
looks
they
like she's
didn't
wearing
really.
more of like a flowery dress.
Okay,
Hold on, I'll grab a picture. I mean, it's possible, but it looks more like a flowery dress. Um, from what little I couldn't find a good picture of it, but hold on, I'm sending it to you now. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, maybe it is, but I think it's just she's just wearing something that looks like kind of in the 70s a little bit.
yeah.
But
I mean, that would be interesting if that was the case. I don't know if they're going into that much
I don't know if
detail, but
that's
the art
specific, but
departments
yeah.
in Hollywood for these kind of big productions are known to kind of like slip in something like that every once in a while. But as far as this destruction goes, it definitely looks like these cars are being crushed in real time. There's not like they were prepped and moved around. I mean, it could be that they're doing this between takes, but I can easily see Green Lantern being the reason why this is happening here. Uh, and John, thank you for sending that picture over. Let me see if I can pull that up
Yeah.
because that is an interesting shout by GBO. She's definitely not wearing the same kind of dress. It's more of a flowery dress for sure.
Yeah,
So
it's
let's
more
do a
like cool
comparison.
colors. It's like pink and blue, like
Yeah.
a light pastel. So, I mean, that's definitely like a nice idea. Um, but I don't think that's the case. I think she's just wearing, kind of like a 70s vibe to like fit the aesthetic and the tones they're going for. But it was a nice thought. I was like, "Oh, yeah, like
Yeah.
let me look it up." So, I'm really sorry to debunk your theory. I apologize. I didn't mean to sound mean or anything, but that was definitely a really nice idea. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if they do have something similar. Like, I mean, the
Yeah.
squirrel scene seems like kind of like a wink and a nod to that famous scene from the
Hmm.
original film. But but yeah, it was a nice thought. I liked that. I was kind of hoping when I looked it up. I was like, oh my god, that would be so great. But I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry.
That would be yes, that would be. I mean, my favorite photo of the day is either the one with the squirrel here or the one where Superman is like literally like staring up at the sky. What is your favorite photo of the day of
I
shooting
kind
in
of like the one where he's
Cleveland?
fixing his hair a little bit. Like, he's just kinda, like, looking like, I don't know, just, like yeah, like, and it's so funny because I think that's, again, kind of a James Gunn thing to do. Like, his suit is charred, looks like complete shit, like, "Look at this," and he's like, "How's my hair?" Like, he's like, "I gotta make sure I don't look like Clark Kent," and he's, like, fixing his hair. Like, I don't know, and
Is
they're
it the
clearly
little
filming,
lock
he's
that kind
filming
of
him.
that's
So,
yeah.
like, maybe it's just a reflection off the camera lens and it's not actually filming. I hope it is. I
Yeah.
hope it is because that would be so like,
I mean, yeah.
yeah.
I think this shot here is pretty good too. I
Oh,
love
yeah.
this shot because it reminded me of like the shot where Superman is standing back. I think it was yesterday, while
Mhm,
Green Lantern's walking forward and Superman's like cape is just blowing in the wind. Like you could take that and you could just like put it into the intro for the new
mhm.
DCU. Like like the Marvel has their own intro. DC Studios could have their own intro too. I think it's yeah, just again you're starting to see not just the suit but the character and the story all come together, and we have so many more pieces to kind of add up. It looks like so far a lot of what they've shot is probably first act stuff, but certainly when he's getting
Mhm.
arrested, that might be a little later in the movie unless this all ties together, like unless this is all in the movie happening in the course of a single day. We'll have to see, I mean, how it all plays out. But again, yeah, it's nice to see the human side of Superman again, which this movie is definitely going to be emphasizing quite a bit. There is more to discuss though. We got some news from Zack Snyder a few days ago. He posted in Vero, which he's still trying to make a thing out of, and
Stop,
he
Zack
was
Snyder. It's not
teasing.
going to be a thing. Stop trying to make it a thing.
It's not gonna be a thing, but he was teasing that the Snyder cut, or the Zack Snyder's
Yeah.
Justice League as it was known, um is gonna get a theatrical release. People sort of assumed that that meant it was gonna get a theatrical release, like
Wide,
a
wide
wide release,
release.
multiple weeks, many theaters all across the country.
Or maybe at the very least a Fathom event where it's like
Yes.
in the theater for like 2 days, and then
Hmm.
yeah, that's kind of it. But this
But
might
this
be exciting
article in
to see
Cinema
though.
Blend sort of kind of spells it out a little bit, because people started to talk about, like, hey, is this going to be global? Is there going to be a world premiere? Like, what is going to be happening? Are we going to see it in IMAX, like, like Zack Snyder intended for it to be? And as the article says, well, not exactly. There's something happening. There's an event happening on Thursday, August 1st at the Egyptian Theater, which is a well-known theater in Los Angeles. It's
Hmm.
dubbed the Epic Worlds of Zack Snyder, and it will be a part of this special series of screenings featuring a lot of his movies, including the 300. It's going to feature the Watchmen director's cut. So Zack Snyder, of course, is known for his director's cuts.
Hmm.
Dawn of the Dead, which was his first big movie, Army of the Dead
Army of
for
the Dead, yeah.
Netflix, and of course Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now we do have the website for the Egyptian Theater up, and you can see here this is something that is happening between July 29th and the August 1st, and then I believe the Zack Snyder Justice League specifically is going to be playing on August the 1st, which is a Thursday. So you can
And
see
then
the lineup
the
of movies. Rebel
Rebel Moon director's cut is going to also be
and
on the
and
first.
that's the one
That's
where they tried to kind of replicate the whole hype behind the Snyder Cut
and
originally,
it did not
because
work.
supposedly the Rebel Moon movie was as terrible as it was because they were like, there's gonna be a director's cut. I mean, I don't know if this means Netflix is doing this. I mean, obviously Warner Brothers has to sign off on literally every other movie in that list, because
Hmm.
everything else outside of Rebel Moon, and maybe Army of the Dead, outside of those two, everything else Zack Snyder has done has been with Warner Brothers. So, and he's back working with Warner Brothers on a 300 TV series. So, it adds
Yes.
up that that relationship has been restored to a certain degree. But for anybody who's excited about the idea of going to see Zack Snyder's Justice League in a movie theater
You got to
near
be in
you,
LA.
you gotta be in LA. You gotta go to the Egyptian theater, and that's where you're gonna be able to see Zack Snyder's Justice League. Justice is gray, so not even the
Yeah.
color one. This is the
Not even
gray,
the good color.
black and white.
Like the thing is, I don't mind like making like this is going to be a little bit of a side rant, don't worry, I'll be quick. Um I don't mind like I feel like people don't understand making black and white like versions of movies. Like if that was the intention from the beginning, but the studio forced them to
Mm-hmm.
make it color, I understand. Like, I believe it was Mad Max Fury Road, The Mist, and I believe Logan, but that's I'm kind of a little
But
shaky
also,
on
like,
that.
for example, WandaVision had those episodes that were shot for black and white, and you could tell that the costumes they were wearing behind the scenes, they were wearing different colors because of how black and white, like,
Yeah,
when you
how
turn
about
something black and white,
like
how the colors translate. Yeah,
famously the Adams Family house, the goth
yeah,
Adams Family. If you look at the behind the scenes colors of that, it's yellow and pink because it didn't matter because it was for black and white television. So they had to just make it right so that it would look good on the
right.
black and white cameras for the televising it. So yeah, I don't mind it if you're turning a black and white if you're making a color movie into black and white, because sometimes black and white just makes the movie like look better. I
Right.
believe there is a channel called Black and White Makes It Better, and
Mm-hmm.
that's like by a guy who like analyzes this stuff, knows what he's talking about. I recommend checking out that channel. I forget, I think it's called Black and White is Better, something along those lines. He did one for like Color of Money and all that. So I don't mind that. The thing I mind is when you use black and white to get cinephiles into your seats when that was never the intention to begin with. Like they did the same thing for Godzilla minus one. Excellent film. And I thought the intention was that it was originally black and white, but they're like, no, we just made it black and white because it was like the original film. But when I watched the black and white
It's
version, I was like, this it didn't look right because again, I took cinematography classes in college, so I know like I have a bit of
it's
I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm not Sir Roger
right,
Deakins.
right.
Like
Yeah.
don't like I'm not pretending like I know like that level of cinematography. But even I noticed like I'm like in the black and white, I'm like that doesn't look right. The shading doesn't look right. The lighting doesn't look right. It just
Yeah.
this was not filmed for black and white. Meanwhile, Mad Max Fury Road, that was supposed to be in black and white, but Warner Brothers,
They didn't
of
want to take the
course,
risk.
Warner Brothers was like,
Yeah.
no, we're not filming this in black and white. So we're not
Yeah.
making this black and white. So he's like,
I mean,
fine.
it makes sense
And
because
what he did is
commercially
he upped the
it
saturation instead.
yes.
And
Yes,
then
exactly.
The Mist was also supposed to be in black and white, the Frank Darabont film based on the Stephen
Yeah.
King short story. He's like, what I had in mind was sort of like an old Universal monster film, but like set in the modern day, and that's black and white. He's like, I don't mind that it's in color, but black and white was I what I originally visioned, and you can buy
Right.
the director's cut of that online somewhere. I watched it, and now I never want to watch it again because the black and white of that film made it so much more disturbing. Like especially with that famous ending, like it
Yeah.
made it that much more like I'm just getting chills just by thinking about it because it was just like amazing film, one of the best Stephen King adaptations of all time. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend it. But it's definitely one of those movies that's like, oh, the black and white really makes you feel that it's that extra oomph because that was the intention to begin with. Meanwhile, stuff like this, I feel like they made it black and white because it's like, oh, because it makes it like
It's a
more like pretentious and artsy when it's just like that's not
yeah.
obviously the case here because I don't think that's what
Yeah.
Zack Snyder was going for. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I don't know. He never really said anything about it. So I don't know. It's just like I never liked the idea of
I
Justice
think
League being
there's
like Justice is great because like the whole fun of like a Justice League movie is that it's colorful, it's fun, it's
right.
like unless it's like something like a neo western like
Mhm.
Logan, then it just it didn't fit with me.
Look,
It
like
didn't fit with me.
I
But that's
I,
just
I
me.
agree because I watched it in both color and black and white, and you just lose a lot of the. I mean, there's so much VFX work being done. A lot of the flash running sequences. There's so much color. Like this movie was clearly made originally with color in mind. It wasn't, and then also like certain colors don't translate well to black and white because you'll lose the contrast. So I bet you when they did do the black and white, they had to do additional work in certain shots where they had to like recolor elements, VFX elements, so that when they turn it into black and white, it didn't look flat. Because
Mhm.
like for example in WandaVision where they had the black and white episodes, the dresses and the costumes they were wearing had colors that were completely different from when they there's an episode where they go from black and white into color. And like so there were definitely some VFX work being done there because those colors like the red doesn't come across in black and white quite the same way. Like certain
Right.
colors look dark, certain colors look bright, and whereas when you're in black and white you're dealing with shades of gray and then of course the pure blacks and whites. And so like you said, like the color, if you were to simply turn a black and white image and look at a behind the scenes photo of what they were actually wearing, it wouldn't be the colors you would expect. And I think for a
Yeah.
movie like this, that's probably at least partly where the $70 million Warner Brothers spent on getting the Zack Snyder's Justice League, the Snyder cut out, went to like that kind of work. And there
Yeah.
were thousands of VFX shot we heard about. But nonetheless, I mean, hey, ultimately, if you are a fan of this movie and you want to see this in a theater, the Egyptian Theater in LA is going to be playing it on August 1st, 7:15 p.m. local time. You can get your tickets. It's on this website. You can go to the Egyptian Theater's website, just Google it. The Epic Worlds of Zack Snyder is the event, and it's not just going to be Zack Snyder's Justice League, but they're also going to have a bunch of his other movies like 300. They're going to have Dawn of the
Mhm.
Dead, Army of the Dead, Watchmen, the director's cut, as well as Rebel Moon, the director's cut, which is going to wrap up what looks like a week-long event from Monday all the way through Saturday. So that's where that came from. I mean, unfortunately, it's not a wide release. It wouldn't make any sense for Warner Brothers, for DC Studios to be giving Zack Snyder's Justice League a
Yeah, it
movie
wouldn't
that
have
is
made
already a
sense.
few years old,
Yeah.
and ultimately was didn't do as well as people would have wanted it to necessarily. Even Warner Brothers for putting $70 million into it, releasing it for this one day as part of a big event. It's about Zack Snyder's filmography. Makes sense. That's what it's going to be for. Now,
Mhm.
before we finish up, we do always have some fan questions to address.
Mhm.
So let's get into those now. And we have three that we picked out for today. This is from yesterday's show, where my dream in orbit, 1997. He says, I dig the Lord Tech corporate suits of Guy and Hawkgirl, so Guy Gardner there. I expect them to ditch these suits in Maxwell Lord by the end of this film, reverting back to their traditional suits while still being a part of the Terrifics. If I'm not up in arms over these suits, we still have to wait for post production and see these suits in camera to really get the full picture. What do you think about this comment? I mean, we've been talking about it a little bit already. The idea that these suits will probably only be there for part of the movie, not the entire movie, and
Mhm.
that they will get replaced. They'll probably end up either leaving the JLI or the Terrifics, um, and then Green Lantern will have his own suit, the traditional Guy Gardner suit. So we shouldn't be worried too much about it. This is probably just the
Yeah.
beginning of the film.
Yeah, I think that just makes sense to me. Like we've kind of been saying that where it's just like it's going
Mm-hmm.
to be the Terrifics or JLI outfits, and then maybe they're inspired by Superman, maybe they're not, and they're just like they just ditch Maxwell Lord. They're like, I'm a Green Lantern. I should be wearing more green. Fuck this. And then Hawkgirl's like, yeah, I never liked these fucking pants. And then Mr. Terrific is like, well, I like my outfit, but I'll just. But then he like rips off the logo as sort of like a
Yeah,
fuck you to Maxwell Lord.
yeah,
But
just
but that could be fun. Yeah.
yeah. That'd be interesting. That would be interesting to see, and I fully expect that these suits will only be there for part of the movie. Um,
Most definitely.
I
Yeah.
mean, the only suit, I mean, the jacket that Mr. Terrific has got on, that will probably stay the same, but the rest, that certainly that insignia, the Lord Tech insignias, those will probably end up going away eventually.
hmm
It feels very much here. It feels like they're part of a team, but they're individuals, and they'll probably, even if they are part of the Terrifics, they'll have their own suits. Certainly, I want to see Hawkgirl and Guy Gardner have their own original suits from the comics and not just be stuck in these suits, because otherwise they just feel like they don't have their own unique identities. You're not quite maximizing the potential of these characters at that point. But yeah, here's another comment. So again, from yesterday's show, this is from Steven Anderson in 9652. He's been a regular commenting on our shows recently, so definitely want to highlight this one here. He says, I honestly wouldn't mind at all if Gunn set up the Justice League International. The stage definitely looks set in Superman. The white uniforms that Guy Gardner is wearing is definitely a nod to it. Which makes sense. And again,
Yeah.
like we were talking about it, like it definitely looks like this is gonna end up showing us some version of the Justice League, whether
Yeah.
it's the Justice League or the Terrifics, and then we're gonna eventually transition across to maybe the
Yeah.
heroes kind of going off and doing their own thing. I still think Guy Gardner ends up being the one it's somehow involved in that murder in the American heartland that starts up
I
the
could see it
Lanterns
work. I
TV
could see it
series,
happening.
but whether he's the victim or the perpetrator or supposedly the one framed, his journey starts here in the DCU. What do you think about the idea that the Justice League International is being set up here, or do you think this is just a Terrifics or some new group that
I
Maxwell
don't
Lord has
know.
put
Like
together here?
I feel like they would that Maxwell Lord would use Justice League as sort of like, oh yeah, Justice League. That's the boys down in R&D really like the name, like that kind of thing. Because like
Yeah,
maybe it's like Mr. Terrific. It's like, oh, what if we call them the Terrifics? After me because I'm the leader. And he's like, no, that's fucking stupid. And then he's like, what about the Justice League? And then or like and then he's like, "That sounds fucking dumb." And he's like, "Well, the guys and well, the board like it, so fuck you." Or they could do like a wink and a nod, like like what they could do. They was like, "What about the Guardians of Metropolis?"
the
Like like
yeah,
just
that'd be cool. Yeah,
and
just a
then
little
just like,
nod
"Oh my
to
god, Guardians? That's so
Guardian.
dumb." And then like, yeah, that could be
Yeah,
a funny, cute wink and a nod if they kind of have that scene of like
yeah,
Maxwell Lord being like, well, the guys in R&D thought it was good. Someone thought of
yeah,
terrific.
yeah.
Someone thought of Guardians of Metropolis. Fucking ridiculous. Or Guardians of America or something like that. Yeah. So,
Guardians of the Galaxy. That sounds almost more stupid than Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't know. That'd be fun. I would love to see a little bit of a nod there, a wink
yeah, most
between
definitely.
DC and Marvel. We're all fans of comics. Whichever flag you fly. I mean, you're allowed to love both. And James Gunn, of
Mhm,
course, comes from a world where he's done work on both franchises and
mhm.
made some of the best of both worlds. So let's take a look at our last comment of the of the day that we wanted to highlight. There's lots more comments beyond this, and we'll definitely pick out more to talk about in coming shows tomorrow and next week. But JB1138 here mentions Mr. Terrific flying reminds me of Orion from the New Gods. That's interesting, John. Like, what do you think about that
Yeah,
comparison? Like, certainly the suit, I think, is really where this comes from, right? Or like not the suit, but just that
the
all of
jetpack. Yeah, it kind
the
of
jetpack and everything
like a
else.
more over designed Earth vibe to
Yeah,
Orion's like flying apparatus. I don't know what it's called,
yeah.
but
Like
yeah,
you see the
that's
crew here lugging it around. There's a lot of
yeah. I
pieces
could
to this
definitely
thing.
kind of get that
Yeah,
vibe because it's like that's
yeah.
like very like fourth world tech, so it looks more
Hmm.
streamlined and that kind of thing. But like that seems like a more like earthly kind of version. So yeah, I kind of like that little maybe a wink and a nod, maybe something else. Who knows? But like I kind of
Yeah,
like
because
how
when
they
you look
noticed
at
that.
it,
Yeah,
like what Orion does wear, there's a lot of similarities for sure. It definitely looks like in some ways it's similar, although Orion has weapons attached to it and everything, whereas Mr.
yeah.
Perfect seems to just be using this to
It's
fly
yeah,
around.
just a jetpack. Yeah,
And we have seen Mr. Perfect on the ground in the early parts of filming where he was not wearing this. So this is clearly just an apparatus which maybe folds away somehow, becomes like a briefcase or something that he can just tuck away.
hmm.
Because of course he probably has nanotech or some kind.
Oh yeah,
I should
yeah, yeah.
I'm just assuming here, but it seems like that might be what's going on. Yeah, I've really enjoyed going through all these photos each and every day. I think just overall seeing Superman in action, doing all of these stunts by himself.
Yeah.
Plus, also knowing that this is Superman's movie because he's the only actor. David Corenswet's the only actor who's been on set each and every day. Just
Yeah.
think about it, because for anybody who's thinking this is a movie that's a clusterfuck because they've got 100 different super characters and like how are they going to focus on Superman? This is becoming a Batman versus Superman situation. Superman is still the primary focus, and James Gunn keeps reiterating all of these other characters are there because they are a part of the story that he's telling about Superman. And this Superman story at the end of the day, he is the focus of the story. He's the focus of the movie, and you could tell like he's been in most of the shots, despite the fact that they have had all these other characters come in and go. Superman is the only through line between all of these days of filming. Whether he's getting arrested, whether he is saving a squirrel, saving a girl,
Hmm.
working with the Terrifics of Justice League International, or even just there by himself, like saving a dog from something falling out of the sky, saving kids, in the crowd. Like he is the only through line across all of these days of shooting, and
Yeah.
seems like that's going to continue to be the case. Um, so we'll see where it goes from here. Supposedly, this was yesterday was the last day shooting in public square, but then they
Hmm.
shot again today in public square. So I'm beginning to wonder, like, if they're gonna continue to shoot there again tomorrow.
Right.
It would
Yeah.
make sense because it's not cheap to shut down a city, and certainly like the downtown area. So they're likely to shoot multiple days in a row as much as possible, even though
Hmm.
today was 4th of July. So hey, 4 days in a row they were in that area in the public square in the middle of Cleveland. If they're there back again tomorrow, we'll definitely be covering it. If they're somewhere else shooting, we'll definitely be talking about it. As always, we thank you for stopping by and joining us for this, and of course, leaving your comments and questions and fan theories in the in the
Oh
live
yeah, of
chat,
course.
as well as in the comments. I mean, we highlight your comments. We love to highlight the comments that talk about them, address the fan theories, and dive into them, even come up with some of our own. I mean, John, you've had a bunch of them. My fan theory about Guy Gardner somehow either being the one who gets murdered or is somehow framed or maybe even responsible for the inciting incident of the Lanterns TV series. I'm gonna hold on to that one because I feel like
Yeah,
there
it's
is
an
some weight
interesting
behind it.
theory. Yeah.
So, but that's what we're here for. We're here to talk, not just talk about and look through the images from the day, but we're here to try to make sense of all the jigsaw puzzle pieces, because
Oh yeah.
ultimately this movie is starting to finally come together, and we're starting to see the
Come
tangibility
together.
of this. Like Superman in the flesh, and whether it's a super bulge or super booty or whatever, or the logo or the cape or the no cape, all of that combined. I will eventually let go of my obsession with that. But hey, we're going to be
Eventually.
back here tomorrow again, talking about Superman. It's the first movie in the new DCU. We are so happy that you guys are here with us for the ride. DCU Daily, we are here daily Monday through Friday talking about the DC stories, whether it's Elseworlds like the Penguin, like Joker Folie à Deux, and of course we're talking about Superman. We're talking about Creature Commandos. Those are now starting to get release dates. We got Kite Man, Hell Yeah, on the way. There's lots and lots of DC projects coming up later this summer. And this movie is likely going to continue to film for a little while longer. They've already been filming for a couple of months. So we'll continue to follow it. As always, we love that you guys are joining us for the ride. John, thanks again for stopping in. And your expertise is really, what helps drive the show. So we really appreciate everything that you bring to the table. And I hope that we've, been providing some good insight into what's going on over there in Cleveland with all the filming going on. And it looks like they might be continuing again tomorrow. So we'll be back here tomorrow. Until then, like and subscribe as always, and hit the notification bell so you know when we go live. And then we'll be back here tomorrow with more DCU Daily. Until then, watch something DC related. You can check out these photos on cleveland.com that we've been talking about. They're all over X, maybe even just Jared. And we found a few of them over there. And yeah, we'll be back here tomorrow with the latest in the world of DC, most likely talking more Superman. Until then, Squirrel.